If you've ever bought a candle and it's turned up like this, you'll see how frustrating it can be. And if you contact the store or the company that sent it to you, you'll probably find that they'll refund you the money but don't actually want the candle back. I think it's because they don't want you to handle the glass damaged and everything like that, but don't worry, there are ways to save the candles if you want to. So if I just turn it around, you can see how damaged this jar actually is. And it's like that because it just wasn't packaged properly on its way to me. I've had the same problem with quite a few Yankee candles now, so I've decided I'll put together a video to show you how you can save your Yankee candle, and it actually works out that you got a free candle from the company, so that's great. So let's get started. Here are the items that you're going to need to fix your Yankee candle or whatever brand candle that you're trying to repair. So we have, of course, the cracked candle jar. We also have 2 empty containers. The reason I've got 2 is because the cracked candle is a large size and the only empty jars I have right now are medium and small. So we're going to go ahead and put as much as we can into the medium, and whatever's left will go into the small jar. Because of that reason, you may not have to do this if you have a jar the same size, but I've got candle wick holders, candle wick, scissors and pliers. These are only to get the wick ready for the small jar. Of course, like I said, you won't need this if you have a jar that's the same size that you're trying to pour the wax into. On top of this, you will also need a saucepan and some boiling hot water. The saucepan needs to be big enough to fit this candle jar in, and the water will go up to maybe halfway up this jar. So I'm going to move all of these items, get my saucepan onto the hob and start the water boiling so we can start this process. So here we have a saucepan, and you just need to go ahead and place your candle into the centre of the saucepan. Be careful because obviously these edges are sharp, they are broken glass, so you don't want to cut yourself on them. And I've boiled a kettle with some water. I tend to do this because it just helps speed things up. I'm gonna need a little more water. Okay, and you want to go ahead and start cooking your candle. This can take a while, but you do need to keep an eye on it, especially with this candle because the wax is actually above where the glass is broken. So I'm going to have to try and spoon some of the wax out pretty quickly as soon as it starts to melt so that I can get it into the other jar quickly. I've turned the candle around so you can see how it's melting. You should be able to see here some candle wax bubbling. It's actually inside the jar and it's making its way upwards, so it's melting from the bottom up. One thing I may have to do that I didn't think of doing before is to get a Pyrex dish and put this whole candle inside a Pyrex dish, because the cracks that I have around here, as you can see, there's wax above them, and if the wax gets in the water I then can't use it. So I'm going to leave it go up slightly and try and get a spoon in and get some out, but worst case scenario I may need to get a Pyrex dish. Here you can see the candle has almost melted to the top. It's probably still in solid form in the centre of the candle, but all of the sides are about to be total liquid. So I'm ready for this section here to spill out. I've also got a Pyrex dish here. If you are going to use a dish to pour the wax into before you put it into the jars, which you may need to do because obviously you need to get the wick into the jar before you pour everything in, otherwise you're never going to get it to the bottom. I do suggest using a Pyrex dish, or at least a heat-proof dish of some kind. This section of wax should actually fit into the jar now, so I'm going to go ahead, grab my jar and pop it straight in. Now, since we don't want to handle this crack jar any more than we need to, we're going to go ahead, and this is where I've been spooning the mixture out throughout the process, and we're going to pour the contents of this crack jar here into our Pyrex dish. Like that. Be careful because everything is still boiling hot. Now that this candle can take care of itself, it's time to fill up the remainder of the wax into our small Yankee Candle jar. Of course, you can use any brand, any make, it really doesn't matter. So you want to hold your wick up and start pouring in your wax. And again, we're just going to hold it until the wick can hold its weight and keep itself straight. And here we have our saved Yankee candles. So here's the crack jar, and it's still a bit messy, but there's no point in cleaning it as it's just going in the bin. We have our full medium sized candle. Usually I would take the label off this one and put it onto there, but it's not going to fit, so there's no point. And here, still drying, we have the small Yankee candle. As you can see, the wick is still sticking out, and it's still a bit messy because I don't really want to touch it too much while it's not dry. Now, for those of you wondering what I was doing with these wick holders, I'll just do a quick demonstration to show you how we put the wick into the wick holder and what I needed the scissors and the pliers and all that jazz for. So, you're just going to take your wick, try and find the end, okay, and I always use the scissors just to cut a small amount off, only because I find it easier to get it into the wick that way. So you're just going to slot it into the hole until it's through, and then I take my pliers and give it a squeeze. Trim the end off, and then you have your wick. So now you can cut that as tall or as short as you need. As you can see with this candle, I purposely made it long. I didn't know how high up it was going to fill the jar, and also you want to have extra so you can trim it down when it's all set, instead of needing more and there's not really a lot you can do about it. So I hope you've enjoyed this tutorial, and I hope it helps you save your damaged candle jars. I'll see you soon, guys. Bye.